Hi guys, this is Sam. It's time for another Monday Musing where I basically just talk to the camera, unscripted and off the cuff, about a particular topic. And today, some Kickstarter tips. Now, this is on my mind because I recently finished a Kickstarter for my newest book, Unfamiliar Skies Issue 2. Don't worry, this is not a plug. The campaign has ended, ergo I can't be plugging it. So, essentially, there were some lessons learned from the campaign. There always are. That's not to say it was a bad campaign by any means, but I think if we all share knowledge, then we can all look to run better campaigns going forward for the benefit of the group. So I would very much invite discussion on this topic. I'd love to hear what has and hasn't worked well for you too, so that we can all try to come together on this one. Now, my philosophy on Kickstarter is that you have to be very respectful. I try to look at it from the point of view of, if I was a backer, what would I want to see? And for that reason, I think some of the things we're going to talk about goes beyond comics. I think some of it could be applied to, board games, video games, films, web series, whatever it is you want to make, really, and put up onto Kickstarter, some of this will apply to. So, when I'm crafting a campaign, I don't try to think about it so much from me as a creator, because, of course, I'm invested, it's my book, but from the point of view of, just a man on the street looking at this thing. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is rewards, because rewards are incredibly important to me. Essentially, comic books are quite... It's one of those weird things. There are small margins on comic books. They cost, a fair bit to produce and get printed, especially in the limited quantities that small press and indie print the books. I mean, I have to do a minimum run of 200 to make any book viable, really. But also, they don't sell for a whole lot. So that means you've got, a high cost, low sale value. There's not a lot of margin in between. So... First and foremost, the Kickstarter is not where I try to make a profit. If there is at the entry level £1, I cannot stand the thank you pledge. I really can't. A thank you pledge seems somewhat empty to me personally, and for me, it's sort of like, I'm thankful if someone's looked at the campaign and given it some serious thought. I'm sort of grateful before you've given any money, if you even choose to give money, if that makes any sense. I'm purposefully being careful about my words around that, because I know the thank you pledge is popular, but in this case, like, a digital copy of a comic book that will be £4 when it comes out, there's no way that I'm charging more than £1 for that digital copy. It's what it's gonna be, So I think, anyone who backs a comic project, for a single issue at the very least, they deserve to get to read it. And if you are doing something more expensive than a single issue, if you're doing a video game, or you're doing, let's think, video game, board game, a graphic novel, so that would be obviously much higher production cost because it's a much bigger book, then at £1, at least put them in the credits, or have some pin badges, or some print, or something that's relatively low cost that you can give them. Do something. Heck, a wallpaper is better than a thank you in my eyes. It's digital, it's ones and zeros, it's not going to cost anything for you to give it to them. Anything is better than the £1 thank you pledge. I'm also going to apologise in advance, because usually I would turn my monitor off to record this, because I'm aware that the screen reflects on my glasses and you can tell exactly what I'm looking at, and it's highly distracting for me and you. It puts me off my game as well when I'm talking. However, in this case, I wanted to make sure that I have my facts and figures right, so I do have the campaign open in front of me, just to make sure that I'm getting everything captured. One thing that was important for this campaign, and it's something that I've seen a few other campaigns falter on, this is an issue 2, and I'm aware that not everyone got issue 1. So this could be a brand new series to some people who didn't even know issue 1 was a thing. So it was important in my reward tiers to make sure that issue 1 was available. I went about that a couple of different ways. So you've got, as well as a £1 pledge for a digital copy, at £2 you got issues 1 and 2, so that, someone could get both and start from the beginning. At £5 was the physical, and this comes back slightly to being respectful. I would never want a Kickstarter backer to be in a worse position than someone on the street. So, let me explain that a little bit. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. I always do what I can to make sure that the Kickstarter reward copies go out before a book can appear at a convention or be otherwise sold, so that the people who backed it are the first people to get it. That's quite important to me. So it's also important to me that a Kickstarter backer does not pay more than someone who, if anything, a Kickstarter backer should probably get a discount, because they're the ones giving you the trust up front. They're the ones believing in you and your project and helping it actually exist in the first place. So if anything, they deserve, something back for that. So the £5 pledge, it was the physical book, and the reason for that, it's a £4 cover price, and then postage. I mean, I've obviously included £1 for postage. Postage will probably cost me more than £1 per book. However, I view that as giving the backer a slight discount on the cover price, if that makes sense. So again, that's being respectful, but there are two options. You can either get the new issue 2, or there was also, which a couple of people, literally a couple, 2 backers, have taken me up on, was £5 for issue 1. Some people might not want both issues. Some people might just want to dip their toe in with the first issue that's already available. So that was important to offer too. And it just sort of goes up from there. The more you put in, the more you start getting in terms of, sort of like prints and commissions and that kind of thing. So what I often see on Kickstarters are either rewards that, put backers in a worse off position because they're asking for more than the cover price of the book, or reward tiers that are confusing, where you need sort of like an Excel chart to map out what you get with each tier. So, in my mind, again, this is me and this is personal opinion, like this whole video, so if you want to, grab some torches and pitchforks, put them down, let's have a rational discussion in the comments instead. So, in my mind, as the tiers, go up, so should the rewards. If you go up a tier, I think everything that was included in the previous tier should be in the next tier. And the next one after that, and the next one after that, and the next one after that. Now, I did break that rule by adding in, it was a later addition because it had been asked for. There was a little ways up. They asked for it, and then they didn't back for that tier. They went for a different tier. That's interesting. Anyway, because I know who asked. But there was one tier where it was like the books and an A4 commission, and as someone specifically asked me, can you add a tier that is just the commission and not the books? Which I found odd. And, I added that for them. So that is an exception, I suppose, but for the most part, I think, to save confusion, to make things as simple as possible for the people viewing this page, so that they can decide very quickly what they want, I think as you go up, everything that was included lower down should be in these upper tiers as well. It just makes sense to me. It really does. So, we've got that. And I also think the other issue I sometimes see is too much choice. You go onto some Kickstarters and there's like 20 to 30 reward tiers, and I just think, okay, wow, that is a lot. And again, it puts me in a position where I don't know what I want, and then I don't make a decision, and then I don't pull the trigger on that Kickstarter, and I don't back it. So that can be a problem as well. We should also actually talk about the rewards in terms of making sure you get the amount you need. So, first of all, there's 3 different pricing ranges. And this comes in handy for convention tables and things as well, but you've got the low range. So these are things like, digital copies, pin badges, that kind of thing. £1, £2, nothing, you're in single figures, mostly. You've got the mid-range tiers, so you're talking, double figures on this project, like £10 to £30. And then you've got the high-end tier, so these are sort of the luxury items, the ones that people are really going to want. And with comics, that becomes very difficult. Most of them are going to fall in the low and the medium. Now, for my project to add in the high-end, I've had a be in the book, so you get to, be a character in the next issue, and I work with you to sort of get photo reference, that kind of thing, and then put you in to a suitable spot that usually I have a character written in who is there, plays a role, but ultimately they won't be returning, and they're not. What I wouldn't want to do is force someone in. So usually there is a role that can be filled, like a mercenary or a one-time baddie, or like just a one-off character like a barman or something like that. And that's perfect for that kind of thing. So I've done that for Joe Cape issue 2, and also Unfamiliar Skies issue 2. So those will both have characters in them that were Kickstarter super backers, basically. And that is in triple-digit territory, and also limit that reward so that you're not adding a whole bunch of people to your comic. So, that's sort of more bespoke. Obviously for, projects like a graphic novel or a video game, you can start looking at special editions and things like that, but for a single issue it's very hard to hit that high-end tier, so that's when you're looking more at, offering commissions and things like that, because then that's a unique piece of art that they can't get elsewhere. As for actually coming to a figure, there are a couple of ways. People are like, oh, how do you know how much to ask for? How do you know what your total should be? And I'm sorry, it's really warm in here. I'm sweating quite a bit, but I don't want to open the windows because then you'll just get all the noise of the traffic right outside, because we're on a main road. So yeah, I just decided rather than the noise pollution, I would just sweat it out. That seemed like a good idea at the time, and that's what I'm now doing. So, for this particular project, I looked at, okay, so if I'm to sell the book for £4, which that price point is just based on an average for single issues in the UK small press scene, combined with looking at what Marvel DC comics sell at, and sort of just what people are conditioned to expect to pay. So, I mean, essentially, this will probably be for another Monday Musing, is how much it costs to go to a convention and sell. But at the moment, just trust me when I say that to make it even remotely viable, the cover price needs to be double what it costs you to print the book. So if I want, £4 cover price, then really I need to be printing at about £2 per issue. In most cases, I don't meet that. I end up printing at about £2.20 an issue, which is, I mean, I'm not doing this as a full-time job. This is a hobby. I have a career that takes care of the bills, so that's not so much an issue. As long as it can sort of turn itself over, and I'm not going to bankrupt myself, then it's fine. But no, so I'm thinking, okay, that's my starting point. No, £4. That means I need to print them at around about £2, and that's when I approach printers. So there is Stuart Gould at UK Comics. There is Richard. I'm forgetting his last name. For some reason, my brain is saying Hardman. It might not be Hardman. I apologise, Rich, if it's not Hardman. But at Comics Printing UK, those between those two, they do about 95% of all small press and indie comics in the UK. They know what they're doing, essentially. So those are always the first two ports of call. It's like, this is the spec I want, the paperweight, everything like that, which just comes from, my, at college, I studied a BTEC National Diploma in Graphic Design at university, or they called themselves an art school, but let's face it, it was a university. I studied a bachelor's honours degree, and that was in video game art and design. And then in my day job, I work as an instructional designer. So I do, we're talking a lot of years experience. So when it comes to things like, paper, stock and weight and that kind of thing, generally I can say, this is what I'm aiming for. But if they have other options that they'd like me to consider, obviously they print comics day in, day out, so I will listen to them as well. This paper stock, this many pages, this quantity, I need to get it to, about £2 per issue. How many do I need to print? And then how much does that come to in terms of cost? And I managed to get for this 200 copies around about the £370 mark was where the two quotes were averaging out. I do, now that the Kickstarter's finished, I'm actually going to have the money soon. I need to get back in contact, make sure those quotes are still valid, because always get your numbers before the Kickstarter. I can't emphasize this enough. There are a lot of people who sort of assume a figure and then don't contact any printers for any quotes until after the Kickstarter is already run, then find out that they don't have enough money, at which point it's too late because they're already committed to delivering the book. So don't do that. Like I say, I approach both printers months in advance. I need to make sure those figures are still valid, because I can understand them saying, look, 3 months from the quote date, fine, but none of these guys, I can't imagine it'll move or change all that much. So then you know that, and you go, okay, that's fine. So you know exactly how much you need to print it. So, the average came out. This is why I've got the numbers in front of me on the actual thing. The average between the two quotes came out at £375. So that's not the only thing we're printing, though. So for the Kickstarter, to hit that low, middle, and high end, if I just had the comic, and we're saying, right, we need to print, 200 copies, to actually get to, that amount of money, I'd have to have half of the stock sold before I got it. I'd have to have 100 backers all wanting physical copies, which is never going to happen. I don't know, it could happen, but it's unlikely to happen. So, of course, there are going to be some other rewards in there. So you've got, art prints. I decided against mugs and t-shirts this time, just because t-shirts were an absolute nightmare last time. I put up, for Unfamiliar Skies issue 1, I put up a t-shirt tier, and only 3 people went for the t-shirt, which was a problem, because everywhere that I had approached had a minimum order of 10 shirts. So I had to order basically the 3 shirts for the Kickstarter backers, and then 7 more shirts. So I got 2 for me and 2 for my partner, just so that we can wear the shirts behind the tables, makes sense, branding, what have you. So that took us up to 7, and then I just basically got a small, a medium, and a large as spares and leftovers. I was like, well, if it's a minimum order of 10, it's a minimum order of 10. And what that ultimately meant was that I, on the t-shirt tier for issue 1, I lost money on that. So when it came to issue 2 and I was looking at mugs and t-shirts, nope. No, absolutely not. So there were no mugs or t-shirts this time, but Prints and a couple of other bits were up for grabs, so I went round awesome merchandise, Vistaprint, Saxo Print, Digital Printing UK, obviously the guys who were printing the comics themselves, and got a rough estimate for that, which ended up coming to about £100. Then shipping costs, so this was basically, I knew from my 2 previous campaigns that I would probably get around about 50 backers. And actually, I think we ended on 57. So we ended on 57, so it was about right. If anything, it's slowly edging up, so that's good with each campaign for more people to be coming. So we got 50 people. Let's assume they're all from the UK. Okay, let's get some prices from Raw Mail. What would that cost to send out? Because I've got, obviously, comics and stuff here that I can weigh, and I can figure that out. One thing I did do this time, that I didn't do last time, I bought the envelopes in advance. So, my last campaign for issue 1, had the books printed ready to go. And I was like, oh yeah, envelopes. Card-backed envelopes are a lot more expensive and a lot harder to find than I had imagined. So, I actually ended up, it was this odd situation where I ended up waiting 2.5 weeks for a delivery of an online order of about 100 envelopes. And it's the weirdest thing to have envelopes posted through your door that you then need to use to post something else out. But yeah, so that was, I included the cost of the envelopes this time. That went into I think I folded that into the producing other rewards like the art prints and such. I put that in there. And then the shipping costs were, right, we'll assume 50 UK backers. What does that cost? And then we'll assume, because my second largest territory from the other 2 campaigns was the US, the United States of America. And of course, our English-speaking cousins. So what does that cost? With 50 backers getting an issue. And then Australia as well. Just because, again, large English-speaking country, when I can get my words out properly. And I took an average of those 3, and I put down £125 for shipping costs, which I think I may have overestimated that. I'll put my hands up there. I think producing the other rewards, because not a lot of people went for the art prints in the end, and the shipping costs I overestimated. However, that said, I would rather have more money than I need than less money than I need. More money means that I can definitely, put out what I've committed to put out. Less money would be a problem. So if you're gonna be a little bit over or a little bit under, it's always best to be a little bit over. In fact, one of my tips in a minute will be to make sure that you're a little bit over. I also added in Kickstarter and payment processing fees, which is essentially Kickstarter take 5% of your total, regardless. It's in the small print. A lot of people don't appear to read it because they go, oh, I raised, £2,000. How come I'm only receiving like 1,800 and something? Where's the rest? So it's 5% flat, and then it is 3% plus a processing fee of, I think it's about 10 US cents per... This is just something off the top of my head now because those figures aren't in front of me. Per pledge, per backer. So overall, it works out around about 10% of the total goal, give or take. So I did put in £50 for Kickstarter and payment processing fees. I slightly underestimated that one. That's going to look more about £70, but it's okay because I overestimated the shipping costs, so those two cancel each other out. What I would say is, once you've worked out your costs, which you can do more or less using the method I just described, add 10% just to cover yourself, just in case you're wrong, or just in case prices fluctuate in the meantime, or something like that. The other thing that I had in terms of setting the goal in this one, and I don't mind saying it, is that I had approached a couple of family members ahead of time with regards to essentially just flat out borrowing the money to cover the print run without success, so that's why I then went to Kickstarter. Once the Kickstarter had sort of gotten rolling and was about £400, a family member then said, okay, on the strength of that, I will flat out give you the remaining 250 to take you over the goal and over the finish line. Now, personally, I would have preferred that discussion to have happened pre-Kickstarter. I would have preferred that to have already been on the table, because then I would have just gone to Kickstarter with a lower goal. I think Kickstarter, there's a lot of things about, people taking money and running and that kind of thing, and it's getting a worse and worse reputation as time goes on. I think stuff like that can sometimes look suspect or sketchy, and there's always the question of, well, if you had that money set to one side for the comic, then why did you ask for more than you needed? In this case, I decided to just be very open with backers and say, a family member is helping us out by taking us over the finish line. This is new money, this is a new discussion, this was not on the table when we started the Kickstarter, otherwise I would have just had a lower goal, taking, that gift into account. So, in terms of, accountability and reputation, you have to go to Kickstarter with some work already completed. In this case, I'm in a position where I've already completed 5 comics, so this will be my 6th comic. That in itself lends me some credibility. It makes me reputable. What it also means is that I am able to, put review quotes and pull quotes from the previous issue into the Kickstarter for this issue. And we did get some really nice pull quotes. We've got Robert Porter from A Place to Hang Your Cape. I really cannot say enough good things about the artwork in this book. It really looks spectacular, which is amazing. Thank you for that, Rob. And then we had 2 others, and this is a bit smug. I'm just going to read them because they make me feel nice, okay? So the other 2, Richmond Clements from Forbidden Planet International. Where it really sparkles is in the dialogue. Webster has a real ear for it, and each character has an immediately distinctive and realistic voice. Which is... I always thought I was an artist first and a writer second, so to get feedback like that gives me a big boost in confidence for the writing side, which I always thought was my weaker element, so I was really happy to get that. And then James Blundell from Pipe Dream Comics. This is a comic which is really enjoyable, feeling unashamedly fun from start to finish, which is fantastic, because that's, it's what you want. You want people to enjoy the book and have fun reading it. So being able to put those quotes there, and being able to link, to the full reviews, again, it puts people in this position of, well, he's done this before, he knows what he's doing, he's got nothing to hide. And then further to that was just having, actual images from the book. Show them a page or 2. It's a comic, they want to see it. And I think that's incredibly important. I think if someone ever refuses to show you part of, whether it's a video game comic or what have you, if they refuse to show you at least even an alpha, something is wrong. If they just come to you with concept art and an idea, then alarm bells should be going off in your head. And with that mentality being more and more prevalent, I think that we as creators need to bear that in mind, and we need to, if we care about a project, if it's our passion, then yeah, it's going to take some of our time, our money, and our investment, personally, to get it started, and then Kickstarter is the rest. Obviously the costs that are here won't be my full costs for this. I mean, I don't pay myself for doing the writing and the artwork and stuff. Of course I don't. I don't think I'd ever be in a position where I'd be able to. I'd like to, but I'm not going to be able to. And you're not going to get that back. You're just not. So I think, you're asking strangers to have faith in you. I think you've got to give them something. You've got to show them why you deserve it in the first place. Which brings me on to actually the risks and challenges section, because there was a gap between issues 1 and 2, and that included a break from conventions as well, which needed to be fully disclosed, because I had, unfortunately had in December a diagnosis of carpal tunnel syndrome from simply overdoing it. As I say, I do a design job in the day, so to then come home and crack out comic pages as well. And then play video games for, relaxing. It just killed my wrist, basically. I now know, obviously, how to handle that, hand exercises, when to rest it, what activities I can do with my left hand instead of my right hand so that I'm not using this all the time, when to take regular breaks, that kind of thing, to prevent it from reoccurring. And if it does reoccur, I do have preventative measures. I'm just trying to... It's on my desk here. This is a wrist brace. It's got, basically, inside that black leather bit there is a metal rod. You can't really... If I just put this on a sec, you'll see how restrictive it is. You can't draw wearing it. You can barely type. I think I can just about hold a PlayStation controller wearing it, which is fine by me, but it's... yeah, take care of your wrists, guys, seriously. You do not want to mess those up. I'm 28 and I've already had a CTS diagnosis. That's never a good thing. There we go, look at that. And I cannot... I just can't. There's a metal rod right there. I cannot move my wrist in this thing. And it's, yeah, it just doesn't happen. Right, let's take that thing off, because I do not need it right now. I only need it on in specific circumstances, and those circumstances have not been met at this current time, so it's a long-winded way of saying that. Let's put that away. See what I mean about these just being unscripted and off the cuff? Anything can happen, including weird, unqualified medical advice that nobody asked for. At any rate, so, put out full disclosure about that, too. It's, the next step in terms of credibility will be getting that book out on time and getting it in people's hands, and it being a good book. That is going to be incredibly important, because you're only as good as your last project. Let's never forget that. And, sorry, these glasses are really... because it's a thick frame, I end up sweating behind the glasses, and that's not fun for anyone. It's really gross. I keep going on gross tangents. It's not... Let's get back on track. Where was it? Oh, yes, credibility. So those things can add credibility to make people more likely to back your campaign. Now, I mentioned I'd taken a break from making comics and going to conventions, partly because of what happened to my wrist, partly because I have a son. He had his second birthday, July last year, and he hit the terrible twos hard. I stopped conventions after Melksham Comic-Con in August last year, just because it wasn't fair to my other half to leave her at home with both our children when he was going through that phase. It was horrendous. I'm sure those of you who have kids can relate. Bloody hell. It's like you invited a hurricane to come live with you. Yeah. And what I perhaps didn't realize and didn't appreciate at the time was that seriously affected my standing in the community, and it seriously impacted my following. Essentially, if you disappear from the internet for even a week, people assume you are dead, or as good as. So I did the Avengers Assemble call for the Kickstarter, and hardly anyone showed up. It was like a fucking tumbleweed just rolling through. It was really quite embarrassing, if I'm honest with you. And for a while, Kickstarters are horrible. They put you through this emotional roller coaster where you really start to doubt yourself at some points, especially when it gets to that middle bit. Because there's the start of a Kickstarter is fantastic, because it's new and exciting, and everyone who was going to back you from the start is there, and they're pledging, and you go, into the triple digits on day one, and you're like, yeah, we're going to do this. This is if this keeps up every day, we'll be there in 6 days. And of course, it doesn't stay like that for 6 days. And then the tumbleweed starts rolling through town, and then you start thinking, okay, is it me? Do I smell or something? Do people just not like me? Is it the promotion? Have I not done enough promotion? Have I not shouted about it enough? By the way, avoid Facebook ads. They came to me promising, oh, we'll boost your posts for £5, right? We'll show it to between 3,500 and 9,000 people. And then when the ad had actually run, they'd shown it to 320 something. At any rate, less than 10% of the bare minimum that they promised when I took the advertising out. And actually, I'm in a dispute with them over that at the moment. It might only be a £5, but it's the damn principle of the matter. Thieves. Absolute daylight robbery. Don't bother. It's not worth the time. But, like, what I learned, really, was that I had to, already have a following. And that's partly what this YouTube is about, I'm not going to lie to you. That's partly what this channel is about. But also, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I need to be more active on them. I just haven't been that active on them, and I need to do a better job of it. I'm hoping, actually, that by having a structured Fan Art Friday, and fan art is going to be another future topic, but that will at least have something every week to post on the Instagram. Oh dear, I need to post Frank West on the Instagram. I haven't done that yet. See, I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at it. But, so that if I need to fund a project in future, the people are there and waiting, rather than having to do a lot of legwork to bring new people in. Additionally, like, the promotion really only started after the campaign had launched, whereas what I've now learned is a lot of people do a build-up, a hype train, leading up to the launch of their Kickstarter, so it's a big event, and that actually they're already in promotion mode a good couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months ahead of time. I didn't do that. I launched it, and then I went to promote it. For example, I sent a press release to about 19 outlets that are small press and indie comics friendly. One of them got back to me. Big thank you to Tony Esmond of downthetubes.net and the Awesome Comics podcast. Also a thank you to Tony's co-hosts Vince Hunt and Dan Butcher. That was very much appreciated. They're good guys. They're very good guys. They have the indie scene's best interests at heart at all times, and their podcast is freaking amazing. First thing I do every Monday as soon as it's out. I don't care where I am. Work, bus, middle of subway, ordering lunch. I'm on there. I'm downloading it. I'm listening. Absolute grade A stuff. So next time around, I think, I need to do more ahead of time to sort of build up that anticipation. I'm going to make this because Kickstarter is something I could talk about probably all night. I mean, I could just keep going with this, but I'm looking at this. I have been recording for a whopping 37 minutes and 48 seconds, which is insanity. It really is. I don't usually waffle quite this much, but one of the last things I'll leave you with is that if I look at my backer report, it's already showing that a couple of the people who pledged, obviously when it's come time to collect the money, their cards have declined. In fact, looking at this list, I've got 4 of them, and in total, that amounts to a significant amount, actually. So, the Kickstarter, obviously, the money's not taken at the time someone pledges. The money is only taken at the end of campaign, if the campaign is successful. So people who pledged 2-3 weeks ago, actually their cards are only being charged now, and they could have had bills come out in the meantime. Literally anything could have happened. The American backers especially could have had a medical bill, which is they really need to sort out their system. I hope England's system does not go that way, it's scary. It looks like it might. But what that means is that number you see at the end of your Kickstarter, that is not an accurate figure, because you are going to have a couple of backers whose cards decline and it's never resolved, so you don't get the money from them. You are going to have Kickstarter fees, payment processing fees, etc. So you never, you might see on my page right now, £705. £705 is not the amount I will receive. So if you're making a Kickstarter, you need to be aware of that, and you need to plan for that, and have a contingency and backup for the worst case scenario, because if this Kickstarter had failed, I would be in a position where I would need to find another way to fund the book. And And that is something for a future video, because we're at 40 minutes now, so I will talk about alternate funding methods and platforms another time. I've waffled a lot. I don't know if this has been helpful to anyone. I really hope it has. I don't know, I like talking like this, just openly and honestly with no bullshit, and I really hope that you like listening to it, and some back and forth and some discussion in the comments or whatever, or even video responses if you want. That would be awesome. Let's have a chat about it, basically. But I'm going to stop my incessant rambling now, and thank you very much for watching yet again. I will see you very, very soon, assuming that you liked this and tune in for the next video.